Isn't it time for your early bird special meal down at the diner?
Like Nick woke up like an hour ago. That meal he showed us was breakfast.
I did wake up. I actually woke up at 11:30 today. I've been very sick for the past, not very sick. I've been pretty sick since like Sunday, but I'm starting to feel better today.
So I will say in lieu of a just a script read before we get into things here.
There is no script.
I'll go ahead and throw my Resonix plug in here. While we were working on the tunes, and I was there at Mobile Audio Plus. Ben's installer, now our installer. We'll just call him Kurt, for the heck of it. He had installed the Resonix in Ben's van. And while Ben was in my van and we were eating tacos and Ben's tacos were getting cold, he was like, yeah, man, that Resonix stuff, it's actually really, really good. Like better than everything else I've used. And, he was really impressed with like the science behind it and Nick's instructions on how to apply it and everything else. And Kurt, also known as Toby, he's, he doesn't just give out compliments all that much. And I never even asked for a compliment, or I don't think he even listens to the podcast to know that there's a connection, but he was, it was pretty cool to hear, on the streets,
cool
blanket
just endorsement of the product. So kudos.
As you mentioned it. He installed that crap into my... Oh, I'm sorry.
What?
He installed that amazing stuff into my personal vehicle, and that's how he,
The crap that you were begging for me to ship out on time?
Yes.
For you to get it done? Oh, yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Because, of course, we're sourcing things at the last minute, like always.
Yeah.
And Toby gave me the same feedback, like, totally unsolicited. Like, he just went on and on about how much he really liked the product. So that's genuinely...
That's always awesome to hear. Like, that's... cool. Thank you, Toby, if you are listening to this, but you're probably not because you're an installer and installers don't care about this stuff. But it's crazy to me. I think I told you guys this on the last podcast we did together. I genuinely think the difference between my product and the next step down is bigger than any other top performing product in a given category to the next step down. I genuinely think there's a huge gap. Yeah, there is such a large gap in the performance between our products and whatever would be next that it's pretty mind-boggling. And all it really took was saying, screw it, let's just make the best stuff. And it's not that difficult if you're not after, if you're not chasing, product reps and dealers and everyone's got to make 70 points of profit and this and that and blah, 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 blah. It's make good product and give it to the people that care about it, because I realized it's most likely not the shops. They care about other things. Being able to sell to, mostly direct to consumer has opened up a lot of avenues as far as keeping it price friendly while being able to offer insane performance. So I don't know. I'm rambling.
Ding.
Yeah, is that it? That's all you got?
That's all you get.
Okay.
Ben?
No, I'm done.
This is your gig.
This is my gig, huh?
Roll.
Well,
yeah, you dragged Clifton out of bed for this,
right? And this is a special episode that we didn't plan whatsoever, and
nobody even knows why they're here. Ben was just hey, let's all jump on the internet at an insanely dark 30 time of night.
Right. Both. So we have Jeffrey Hald and Nick Apicella with us.
Apicella.
Apicella. Come on.
Apicella.
Yeah, there you go.
God.
Haven't you listened to this podcast before, Ben? Come on.
Yeah, dude. Out of all the stuff that I have out there, you've not learned my name yet.
The point of the story is neither one of these guys.
It's better than acapella, because I heard a lot of people say acapella at the beginning.
Yep. That would be a good name for me.
Nick
Apicella.
That would be a good
Apicella
name.
Audio.
Yeah, that would be a fitting name, but it's not. It's just not. And you people who are reading it that are probably a little bit dyslexic, but that's okay. We love you.
Yeah.
So it would be a cool name. Anyways, Ben, why don't you continue and stop,
So this is
screwing this up.
this is what I would say is a special episode that was just kind of like off the cuff and it kind of came about. Let's put it that way. We had the interview with Nick and talking about his new remote tuning business. And
you got it backwards.
We didn't talk about his remote tuning business at all.
Jeff, see, I'm looking. See, now I'm doing the confusing the millennials thing.
Old people.
So,
all right, should we
old
scratch?
People.
Start over.
So we had the interview with Jeffrey about his new tuning business.
There you go.
And I said during the episode, hey, you know, I want to do this. Let's tune my van. That'd be a fun exercise. Let's do it. I want to see what this is all about. And at some point, I was talking to Nick after the fact, and I mentioned to him that my tune with Jeffrey was coming up, and he's like, "Oh, well, I want to tune it too."
I didn't say that.
What did you say?
You approached me.
I was going to say, how do you even know?
How would I even know? You approached me.
We were talking about it.
You said, "Hey,"
it came up.
Yeah, I could pull up the messages. You said, "Hey, I want." Yeah. Oh, yeah. You want to cause some drama right now?
Old guy has zero memory issues.
Jeff, other
whatsoever.
people are trying to create nonsense. I'm just trying to, this isn't me. Okay, hold on.
Nick's
Ben
like,
said,
I got receipts. Hang on.
Yeah. No, I do. It's probably. Oh, we've messaged so much since then. But
okay,
no.
Well,
he approached me and he said, he's like, "Hey, let's do a remote tune." And I was like, "Do I have to?" Like, and he's like, "Well, you don't have to, but like, can we?" And I was like, "Well," in my head, the first thought that came up was, "Why?" Like, I'm skeptical here. Why are you, of all people, number one, approaching me to do a remote tune? Because you can clearly tune very well. Number two, I don't really do that anymore. Like, I still advertise it, I still offer it, but like, I don't really make it a point to do it anymore. Frankly, I've been sending people Jeff's way in recent times, especially. It's just, life has been a little too chaotic to it. Wait, how did that happen? For those who everyone listening.
For real?
Yeah, for those who can't see the video, if you make a heart thing with your hands, it makes a heart thing come up on the screen. Wow.
But it's not for us. It's only got love for Jeffrey.
Yeah, I don't know. Whatever. Anyways.
Apple boys, what's up?
He approached me and said, "Yeah, I want to do a remote tune." And I'm like, "Well, that's weird because you could already tune really well. And number two, like, I don't really do that anymore, but I'll do it." And I'm like, "Wait a second, what processor are you using?" It turns out he's using a processor I've never used before. Actually, I've used once before, kind of, but I actually turned out to I like it. It's not 100% what I'm used to, but it's definitely my second choice in line. And like, it's much closer than what my choices used to be. And like, everything else is way far in the back. Anyways, yeah. So you approached me like, let's remote tune it. Cause Jeff's doing, I want to see you were telling me, you're like, I want to see what is actually like happening. Like, how this is going on. Cause Ben, frankly, I'm going to call you out for a second. You've always been skeptical of it.
Oh, 100%. And that's, you're like taking my entire opening here. So that's, you're saying what I was going to say by.
Yeah. I took your opening, but you got your own opening wrong.
I'm sorry. I don't remember exactly how the conversation came about.
See, Jeff, see this? This is the media trying to cause riots. Okay.
Riots. Yes.
Riots.
The media.
Riots
on sound quality. Yeah. At any rate, we chatted. I don't remember how it came about.
Well, and I just like to point out that
it doesn't really matter.
After we got done with Nick's first interview not too long ago, like what, 2 months ago, whatever it was.
Months ago or something.
Yeah. And after we got done, Ben's like, "Oh man, I totally forgot to hit up Nick on, remote tuning," like basically just, slamming you on it.
That's very true. And I even told you that, like, after the episode, I was like, you know what? I've totally missed my opportunity to drill you on remote tuning because, I have not subscribed to remote tuning ever. Like, this is completely like out in left field for me to even want to go do in the first place. And that's why when we interviewed Jeffrey, I was like, hey, okay, cool. Like, your process sounds really interesting. I'm skeptical, but I want to see where this goes. And so we did. And then we were chatting also. I don't remember how it came up. I thought we just had an open conversation about it. And anyway, we scheduled to have you tune the car too. And it wasn't intended to be a Jeffrey versus Nick thing. This is, hey, I want to get two tunes, remote tunes, two completely different processes. And let's see how close or how far apart the results are. And again, my expectation is very, very low from both of you. I mean, absolutely no offense to either of you whatsoever, having not heard
Jeff, you know what? Why don't we go start our own podcast?
Yeah.
Screw these guys.
But I wanted to see, like, okay, so what this is there are people subscribing to you guys to, put their controls in your hands. And I wanted to see, like, is this a viable thing? Are people ending up with a result that's what I would say, remotely close to accurate? Or are they ending up with something that's like remotely, good job. Or something that's not even like, like I don't want to endorse this, right? And now you guys are on our podcast, we're talking about it, and I want to be like, okay, if we're endorsing these guys, let's at least like
get first
see what happens. Yeah, exactly.
So you know what?
So that's how this came about.
So let me ask you this. Let's just get it right out of the way. What did you obviously we just said what you expected, which was pretty much nothing, and you always gave me a little bit of shit, not too much.
I gave you all kinds of shit.
Yeah, and definitely
100%.
I know for a fact behind closed doors you were talking a ton of shit probably, but that's okay. We all have fun with it.
To Klif and to Tom, my buddies, like I'm like when you guys first started doing remote tuning, like you, and there's some others who initially kind of piggy-tailed on what you were doing, and they've kind of faded away since. But
I'll tell you a quick little funny story. Almost all of the people that have done remote tuning, except for Jeff, were customers of mine of remote tuning. Yeah. Anyways, let me ask you this: your expectation was pretty much nothing, and you didn't think it was like really a thing.
I was skeptical, but open.
Now, okay. Yeah. So now, after doing it, what do you think?
So Nick and I did our thing. Well, Nick did his thing. Let's put it that way. So I had Nick tune my car first. Let me preface this also by saying that I went to the shop to do this because on the day that we tuned, it was an actual temperature of -8 degrees Fahrenheit here with a much colder wind chill. And I don't know, for those of you who don't experience those kind of temperatures, car audio is horrible in cold weather. If it's below freezing, especially, like everything just goes to shit. It's just awful. So I wanted to go to a place where we had at least a little bit of temperature control and could have a decent stab at trying to remote tune this thing in -8 degree weather. Right. So the other thing is I did my homework with Nick. I went to his website. He directed me to his website. Like, I think I messaged you a few days ahead of time being like, okay, what do I need? And you just sent me you told me, go look, everything's on the website. So I went hunting on your website. What's that?
I said, just read this. It's all here.
Yeah. You said, read this. It's here. So I did. I read his webpage and I took it to heart. Like everything he said, you need to be prepared with this, and this. I was like, okay. So, the day ahead of time, I set everything up here in my office just to mimic how it was going to be in my car and did a remote test, right? Is my mic working the way he expects it to work? Are the inputs set up correctly? Just making sure that I had myself ready to go with our RTA mic that he needed.
Which is all on my webpage,
everything's on the website. So I was prepared. I was probably more prepared than most of your customers.
So I will say this. You did everything just as it said right on the website. And you are one of the only people that were as prepared as you were. And what I'm getting at is everyone reads the webpage, but they're still not prepared, at all, which is honestly, I would say more than half the reason I'm not really interested in doing it as much as I once was, is because I tell everyone, make sure your install's ready. Left is left, right is right. No speakers are messed up or this is going on, or make sure your microphone works. Make sure your Wi-Fi is quick enough. No, of course. Make sure you can do track repeat. Make sure you have all of these tracks ready to go in order. Of course. Day of. 9 out of 10 people don't meet at least 2 of the criteria on my website. It's insane. It's so frustrating. Where, you saw how quick the process was to set up and get going.
Yeah.
It's plug in a mic, log me into your computer, open up Room EQ Wizard, open up the DSP software, and I explain 5 minutes what we're doing and start. I would say, again, 9 out of 10 times, we're usually on the phone for 45 minutes to an hour before we actually start taking measurements. And that's not what I'm interested in. So,
right.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's not a good use of anybody's time. So
no,
I did my homework. I had what I needed. I had all the things. I had the USB stick with all the music, and just like, I was just prepared. And
thank you. Thank you.
All that to say, Nick was able to, remote into my machine and direct me verbatim on how he wanted me to wave the mic around my head in a Harry Potter fashion, as Jeffrey has said multiple times in a previous podcast. Actually, it's not a very Harry Potter-like movement, I would say. But
coming from a Harry Potter professional.
I did. I took his instructions verbatim. I did exactly as he instructed me, and I just want to make sure that I was being as good of a participant as I could possibly be in the process, right? And we did the physical tape measure to the drivers to set your initial time alignment. I had wiped out all of my crossover settings, and I basically blanked out the tune entirely.
And then even when I was asking you questions, I was like, hey, like, where are you typically finding you cross these out? And you're like, no, we're not playing that game. Do a remote tune.
I was like, this is you. You have to, like, you tell me. I'm not a tuner here. This is you driving. I'm going to be your ears when you ask me to be your ears, but otherwise this is all you. So we did just that. And I did the things he asked me to do. He took his measurements. He did his magic behind the keyboard. I put the laptop on the passenger seat with the lid mostly closed, so I couldn't see what he was doing. I didn't want to know. I was just like, you do it. I'm just, I'm just here. I'm your hands and I'm your ears. And I let him drive. And to be honest, I haven't really gone in and looked at either of your tunes since intentionally. I just I don't want to go look and start.
You just listen.
Them. Yeah. So at any rate, we got through the process, and you told me, hey, go ahead and play some music. I'm going to take a break and get back with me after you listen for 5-10 minutes or whatever. And that was the first time that we played music in the car. So I was like, cool. Hung up with Nick, and then just started playing some of music that I knew, reference music, right, for me. And I was instantly blown away. Like, it was immediately beyond my expectation. And the tonality was pretty spot on. The imaging was pretty exact. There is a little bit about the imaging that we'll talk about here in a second, where I think maybe my participation helped get it to the point.
Definitely.
That it did when I first started listening to music. So I don't know. I may have cheated the system a little bit by giving you some guidance on that.
No, because that was all, that's all kind of part of it. So at the end, let me just, and I think Jeff would agree with this. Jeff, definitely chime in what your thoughts are here. At the end of the day, a remote tune is only as capable as the install is, number one. And number two, the ears on the other end. If you can listen and give constructive feedback that is genuinely objective, then we can make adjustments that are just as if we are hearing it.
Yeah.
I think you would agree,
right?
Say
so.
Yeah.
I've tried to break this down into a very bite-sized conversation where I say, hey, these are the only tracks I want you to use. I'm going to give you a brief synopsis of it and go. We can always listen to your stuff afterwards, but I know what this stuff is, and that's what I'm expecting, some kind of feedback based on my instructions. But I've had customers that are familiar with the music say, like even Ben, when we were working on the tune with him, it's like, hey, I'm hearing exactly this. I'm like, okay, cool. And then, all of a sudden, 2 seconds later, it's like, oh, that was perfect. You fixed it. Good. So exactly. Absolutely. But the only thing that I've tried to strive for on mine is trying to make it so that the customer is as least involved as possible until the end, so that we get to hopefully a point where we went from nothing. Now we're 8 out of 10, help me get to 9, and then send my max back.
Yeah.
That's basically what I'm shooting for.
Exactly. And that's pretty much, I guess, what you can expect out of somebody who is paying for a remote tune Ben is not your typical remote tune customer, but the only reason I think I was able to get it to where, like, because Ben, what you were saying is like by the end of it, you were like, this sounds as if I tuned it. And I think at the end of the day, it just comes down to, yeah, doing the measurements, making the adjustments. We still had a ways to go, but then it's like, okay, now we're going to do like the objective test tracks, the technical tracks, where I was able to, okay, do this and let me know exactly what you hear. We can make adjustments on that, but it's very fine stuff. And Ben does obviously have the ear for it and is able to describe it, where your average person who's paying for a remote tune probably is going to struggle with that. And but you're shaking your head no. What is that, Jeff?
Most of without saying anything about any of my previous customers, there's a reason I've
exactly,
kind of made it like this, because if I had a Ben on the end of every side, I would say, hey, let's bring this car to finals.
Yeah.
Let's do whatever. But the reason that I advertise it's not designed for competition is because exactly what you just said, those fine tonality points, those fine imaging points. I mean, half my clients, I'm having to teach them where center is.
Exactly. Yeah. I don't ask them, does it sound center? I say, tell me where it's placed on your dashboard by the inch. Like, that's kind of what I say to them. And you're right. Like, at the end of the day, it's like, I'll know, I'm going to talk some shit right now. I'll know within 10 minutes of being on the phone with them what level of tune we're getting out of that person, out of that car. Does this person actually understand like the direction I'm giving them? And if they understand it, it's like, okay, I'm going to be able to instruct this person. He might not know what to even listen for on his own, but I'm going to be able to instruct this person on what to listen for and how to give me data back to where I can figure out exactly what's going on. And that's where, working with Ben was, he, like I said before, he read my website, was able to take instruction perfectly, obviously has an ear for stuff, and it went very, very, very smoothly. But here's the flip side is, even if these guys, even when I'm fully done with measurement, even when you're fully done with measurement, the people that can't hear, let's say they're completely like useless as far as their ears go, they still got an end product that is 10 times better than anything they would have done, because they don't tune. They have no idea. And the difference between what that end result is and what it would be if like we were in the seat making those adjustments, like they probably won't even be able to tell the difference between those small differences anyways. Someone like, again, me, Klif, Ben, Jeff, we can tell those small differences because our ears we're at the point where it's kind of ridiculous. And we probably obsess over this stuff, but like your average person, again, who's going for a remote tune, hasn't really heard a system like this before. And the difference, it's all the same, like you said, Jeff, an 8 out of 10 and a 9 out of 10 and a 10 out of 10, they're all pretty much the same thing to these people. And that's okay. They're all really good. So to all the people that like are looking at what Jeff is doing and what I'm doing are like, oh yeah, like, making jokes about it. It's like, dude, these people aren't trying to create the best sounding car in the world. They just want their car to sound good as it can within reason. And they don't have anyone to do that for them. But now they do.
And so yeah, I was just going to say that to review the objectives of what you guys do, to start with, you guys aren't out there saying, hey, I want to tune this competition car for competition remotely. That's not your market. That's not what you're trying to do. You're trying to help people who don't have a starting point, who have tried and failed multiple times. And perhaps there's shops that don't know what they're doing, and you can help them tune cars for customers remotely.
Yeah. I would say like not 8 out of 10 of my customers are people that had a shop do an install or had a shop do a tune, or, obviously, or both. If they're doing the install, they tried to do a tune and it ended up nowhere or nowhere good. And they ended up doing research on DSP tuning and found me. That's how most of my customers who I do remote tuning for end up.
I've had some unique customers through shop here that I tune for, and this is like 2 or 3 customers offhand that I can think of, have come to me for a tune, and I know that they have already been to other very good tuners, and they're not. They just want to see what else can the system sound like. Oh, yeah. Where else could you take it? Like, so, and then I've heard that other people who I have tuned cars for take it to other well-known tuners and have them tune it. And like, that's, I mean, it's a thing. And like, and it's just that they're trying to say, okay, what flavor of system do you want to get?
Oh yeah. Those are the audio nerds. Those are the people that like want, they're like into this.
That's us.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
That's like us. That's like us if we couldn't do it ourselves. You know, we're super into it, but we just couldn't like do it ourselves. Or even if you could do it yourself. Like I have a good, he's like a friend of mine. He's not even really a customer, but I did like a lot of the fabrication work for him and I do his tuning. But he took it to 4 other people as well, just to like see. And I was like, all right, how about it? You know?
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's something is fix it.
Well, the other thing is, I've had customers bring me tunes from other people who I know have tuned it, and they're like, "Can you fix this, this, and this with their tune?" And I just vehemently deny that request. If I'm going to tune a car, I'm going to tune it. I'm going to zero everything out. We're going to start from scratch. It's going to be my tune. I'm not going to take somebody else's tune, not knowing your process, and try and massage it into something that this person really wants a little bit more of or less of.
Yeah, there's no point.
Yeah. So just overall, I would advise people against that. Like, find a tuner, let them tune your car. And if you want to have multiple people tune it, by all means, have multiple people tune it. But don't have people try and fix somebody else's tune. Because that's...
Yeah. On a fresh preset. I don't mind like going back into one of my own tunes. And working on my own tune continuously. I do that for a dozen different clients. And most of them are competitors getting feedback and making small adjustments. But no, I absolutely like it. I've got all the respect in the world for everyone on this podcast, and I'd say that 100 times over. But I would never work on one of y'all's tunes. I would start over from scratch.
Yeah, there's like no point to it, because by the time you figure out what's really going on, it's like we could have been halfway through a fucking tune by now.
Yeah,
you know, and then it would have been laid out in a way that I'm used to working on, and then when you do need help updating it again, I can come back in and like I already know what's going on.
Okay, so where did we leave off? We got off on a little bit of a tangent, but
we got mostly through Nick's process.
Nick. So Nick's process was Nick's process, and we got to the point of listening to music for the first time, and I got back on the phone with Nick and immediately told him, like, I couldn't help smiling, and I was just like, this is better. This is beyond my expectations. Like there are a few little things we can work on. Like, I think I don't even remember what we did, but we did a couple little things here and there. I
remember exactly what we did.
What's that?
I remember exactly what we did. I said, well, what are you hearing? And you mentioned, if I recall, like something with like, you hear your tweeter off to the right or left, I think it was.
The higher portion, like the very uppermost part of the tweeter was coming from the right, which is the tweeter that's more aimed at me.
Yeah.
And just naturally has a more on axis.
So we verified level and balance from left to right, like spectral balance, like tonality balance, as well as level from left to right. Then we went through with like time alignment test tracks that I have, verified that things were for the most part working, except for like on the tweeter, you said like things were like off and weird on the tweeter. We went through with like band limited pink noise, and we found out the top end was like pulling super, super hard to the right, I think it was.
Yeah.
And it turned out it's like you have a nasty, weird reflection going on with your tweeter.
My left tweeter is aimed right at my instrument cluster hump. And there's definitely a struggle bus there. When I've tuned it, like I've encountered very similar issues. So yeah, there's some install things that could definitely be optimized in my van. And if I'm going to try and take it further, that's kind of going to be where I start. You obviously revealed that and found, pointed the things out to me and confirmed, what the issue is there.
Yeah,
it's especially like above 8K. When you're playing band isolated pink noise tracks up that high. It's definitely just all kind of coming from the right. But when you're listening to music and when you're listening to
you don't
real
really
material,
notice that.
yeah, it's that's really difficult to pick out. Yeah. So at any rate, we kind of tried to identify the issue there and maybe massaged it a little. And then I mean, I was kind of just on my merry way with a tune that works very well. And now I listened to it for a week and a half or so before Jeffrey's tune. And I mean, I have some feedback now that we can work on to take it a little bit further, but it's very minor. Like there's a little bit of mid bass work that needs to happen. But otherwise it's a really good tune. Like I really enjoy it.
Cool.
So,
I'll blame that mid bass on you because you asked for more.
I asked for more sub bass. Yeah,
I'm kidding.
Definitely. Well, it's true. I mean, and it's not so much that it's too much. It's more so that,
it's too much.
Like it okay. Well, Clifton got in and said,
too much
I don't
bass.
remember what the hell you said.
No, well, it was funny because I thought mine had way too much mid bass when Jeffrey got done with it. And I don't know. I mean, I don't know what guidance Ben gave him before I got in, but it was funny because the mid bass and sub bass in Ben's with Nick's tune sounded almost exactly like mine with Jeffrey's tune. So it was just weird.
You're weird.
Yeah,
I know.
At any rate, there's a little bit of mid bass work to be done in my car with your tune. But aside from that, like I would send it into the lane. Honestly, like it's pretty damn good.
Cool.
So, that is what it is.
Glad to hear. And also, you're doing what, a 15-inch sub up to mating up to doors where we're crossing them pretty low.
Mm-hmm.
That's tough. That's tough to do even in person.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
So, yeah, I'll take it. I'll take that as a, won. We won. That's it. Like the tune was successful.
Yeah. Oh, 100%. Yeah. Like it's at least acceptable for your average Joe. And it's, acceptable for me as a pretty well-trained ear and competitor and, knowing what I'm after. Like it checks most of the boxes.
Driving a van.
Yes, and a minivan driving dad.
Yeah,
100%.
There you go.
So
we learned something important though on mine. We learned that Facebook kills all frequencies below about 100 hertz.
So there was a that's where I was going to go with Jeffrey's. Like this is a whole intro. Thank you, Jeffrey. Jeffrey sent us the big ass box full of shit, right? We've got the Max.
Is that
case.
what you call it? Come on, man. You paid a lot.
I called your product shit. I called your product shit. I can call his product shit.
You called it crap.
Crap. Okay, I'm sorry.
Yeah, dude. Come on.
I would have said further. Anyway, whereas with Nick's tune, I had to go to his website. I had to make sure I was prepared. I needed to have all my things. I had to have all my ducks in a row. And that's the way Nick does it. With Jeff, I received this big ass box full of stuff. There you go, better word. In the mail, and everything was shipped to me. So there was less for me to do ahead of time. There was literally nothing for me to do ahead of time. But at the same time, I opened the box and I was like, okay, this is all foreign. Now what? So there was a good deal of setup time in getting the microphone stand set up correctly, getting the height all set up correctly, getting the microphone positioned correctly, wiring. I had to connect the Max to my DSP amp as far as the Max being able to play its pink noise directly from the Max to the processor. So that meant uninstalling my install to get to the amp in order to plug in the optical cable, which I probably, had I been more prepared, I probably would have known all this ahead of time and been more prepared to do that. But I'm just noting the differences in how things went. start to finish, and that this is a pretty significant difference. So I'm pointing it out. So there was more setup for me to do with equipment that it wasn't mine, and it was just all kind of foreign. So Jeffrey guided me through it. It was no problem getting it all set up. It just took some time. And I could see where if I were a max tuner and this was my equipment and I were used to doing this constantly, like the setup would be like super quick and easy. Like it was just because it was my first time that it took me longer than it definitely would have taken him. Yeah. So there you go. 3-minute setup time versus what did we spend? Like 20
about 25.
minutes? Yeah, something like that.
About 25. So, and a lot of that was talking like through what every single cable was. And I'd like to point out that I send a lot of redundancy in there. There's RCAs that we don't use. There's extra cables here and there. Like it's just like, just in case you need it, it's there.
Oh yeah. The last thing you need is your Sunday appointment to have a bad cable.
No, I send extra mics. I send extra USB cables. I sent him a USB repeater in case his USB cord wasn't long enough. I mean, like, there's everything in there. You're not.
Yeah. It was a very It was a very well packed box. Let's put it that way. So we got through the setup, and then you remoted into 2 computers. So we had to provide 2 computers. That was another kind of significant difference. Whereas Nick, I had to have my computer with my tuning software in RU, right? And that's all he needed. But with yours, I either needed 2 laptops or 2 monitors to be able to split out the display and give him a full view of both pieces of software on one machine. Is that accurate?
Yeah, that's a preference and efficiency thing. I could do it on one screen. I just choose not to. It's just longer.
Okay.
I would agree. Like when I've tuned with mic arrays, same deal. It's like it's almost pointless to do a mic array type tuning without like split screening like that.
Yeah.
It makes that process as long as any other process. It's just unnecessary.
The point of the array is to speed it up. And when you can't do the split screen, it's like you're going the same speed anyways. You might have some minor advantages.
And it's more difficult.
But
it's probably more difficult to do an array single screen than my method single screen.
Yeah, I'd agree.
Which is why I think I stick to it. To my
Gotcha.
Method. Yeah.
Okay. So we got everything running, right? And then we started playing the noises and you started measuring everything. I guess another difference to note here in the tunes is I'm outside the vehicle at this point with Jeffrey's tune, and with Nick's tune, I'm inside the vehicle moving the microphone around my head during all of his process. So I'm outside the car. The mics are in the car attached to my headrest in the array configuration that Jeffrey very, very specifically specified. Like that the microphones had to be pointed very specific directions at very different points inside the stage, air quoting stage, right? So he's like, yeah, point this microphone at where you would expect left center to be, or something to that effect. Recall exactly.
We'll quote it.
At any rate, it was a very, very precise microphone placement that he had me set up. And he took his measurements. I'm outside the car. I'm watching the Mac software at that point because my laptop, which was controlling the DSP, was inside the van. So I'm watching the other laptop that's running Macs, and I'm watching him take his measurements, and he's showing me how the crossover, everything overlays each other, and he's showing me timing traces, which was the most fascinating part to me. In my tuning methods, I don't have access to Smart, and that's something that I've always wanted to see done, and I was always curious if the results that you achieve by using Smart were very obviously better, right, than the timing that I end up doing it my way, or the way that a lot of other people do it. So that for me, with your tune specifically, that was what I wanted to see, right? All the EQ work, all the crossover setting, like that's old hat, right? Like that we can kind of all get there our own little way, but we all kind of achieve the same curve-ish, right? Like we all know how to EQ for the most part. but the timing was what I really wanted to see. So that was cool to see. And then I got in, right? And you had me listen to things, and we're on Facebook Messenger the whole time. Like I had like a entire day call with Jeffrey. And I think at some point I mentioned to you, hey, well, I'm on the phone with you, but I still need to play music. And you're like, no, it's fine. And I was like, okay. So I just like completely forgot about that. And I fire up the system and I start playing music, and it just sounds bad, right? Like bad. And I'm all we're listening for at this point are imaging things. Like you had muted driver pairs. I'm like, okay, well, it's gonna sound kind of bad right now because not explain. I'm like, we're going through the exercise here, but we did the whole verification from me to you. Is this where it needs to be by driver pair, etc. And then I started listening to music with everything playing, and it was just bad. And I'm like giving you some feedback. I'm like, well, it's missing. Like, there's no sub whatsoever. There's like very little mid bass. There's no detail in the sound. All the top ends just kind of missing. And it's just kind of like, if you put your hand in front of your mouth and you kind of talk like this, that's kind of a little bit like what it sounded like. And I like open the door. I'm like, Klif is walking by. I'm like, Klif, hop in there, listen to it. Just get out and let me know what you think. I give him no information whatsoever. And he gets out and he's like, he gives me this look like, what's going on here? And clearly things were not good for him either. So, I get back in, I'm scrambling. I'm like, why does this sound like shit? Why? Like I've seen what you do. I watch your process. I know things should like, this is repeatable for you. This should be a much better experience than what I'm having right now. And then I'm like, okay, you know what? I started switching sources on my head unit, but it kept telling me that I was in a phone call, and I was not in a phone call, but it was like, you're in a phone call, you're in a phone call, you're in a phone call. So long story short, it had reduced everything to a like phone call, like bit rate. And I was like, hang on, save your shit. I'm going to restart the car and we're going to do this again. So as soon as I fired it back up, we were no longer in a phone call. I started playing music and magic. There it is. So, we had a little bit of a hiccup. I didn't get the same experience from you that I did from Nick of like, holy shit, you just did magic. And I wasn't expecting that. For the simple fact that there was a issue with the source.
What your car was doing was cutting off the low end and top end for the sake of like reducing background noise on a phone call.
Yeah. But as soon as I restarted and it got out of, hey, we're in a phone call mode, it was just instantly better.
I mean, it makes sense. You don't think of that like immediately, but like it makes sense looking back at it.
Right.
No, I'd like to chime in on that because like,
sure.
So let me clarify that I was too lackadaisical looking back on it, all things being equal, because I was like, it's Ben. I don't need to give him, specific instructions on how to set up a mic array, and I don't need.
What do you mean? This guy don't know how to do anything. Like, he does everything by ear.
No, and then I was like, oh yeah, maybe he just finds Facebook Messenger better. But like, so I wasn't in the driver's seat, so to speak, on a lot of the decision making, as much as I would have been on a normal client where I'm saying, no, do A, B, C, period, end of conversation. So I've never done a Facebook call with my client. I don't do video calls. I call them on the cell phone. And so there's never that I've never run into that issue.
Yeah, it was totally unique and like, not your fault at all. Like, no. And I just like, I mean, but it was just, my initial reaction was, okay, this is bad. This is not going well.
I'm surprised you didn't know what it was immediately though. You were on a phone call and your car didn't say anything like.
No, because I was
because you're on
CarPlay and
Facebook call.
I was on Facebook Messenger
CarPlay
with a video call.
Messenger, but it still recognizes it as a call,
as a phone call. Yeah. So it was a weird thing.
That's another thing we could just blame Facebook for,
or blame me. I mean, it's totally fine. It's me. I'm the problem. It's me.
Legitimately, when you get in, it should be basically the same exact situation as Nick's tune, in that same ballpark of, okay, it's really, really good. We're just going to touch this and that thing. And then so that whole Facebook call conversation, like the whole setup, I normally send a entire instruction, go like, hey, do A, B, C, D, D, you know, and then during the breakdown of it and like the listening portion, we don't have that problem again because it's all done via phone. Then you hang up a cell phone and the phone automatically switches to the music portion of its playing, right? Not the cell phone portion. And it just turned into this like way worse than it should have been. And I'm like, okay, great. This is Ben and it sounds like poo.
Yeah.
Awesome.
You're having like a mad panic. Like what is going on? Yeah. What is this old man who's never, you know, tuned a card normally doing now?
So long story short, my time with Jeffrey in the car after that point was very short. I gave him a little bit of feedback after that. And I said, I basically just wanted to listen to it. It's like, okay, well, this is so much better than it was 2 minutes ago that I just now have to actually listen to it. And then we'll wrap back around and I'll give you some feedback. But in the meantime, why don't you go get started with my buddy Klif over here, who happened to jump in on this whole game. And we're going to tune his car too. So Klif, who needs to unmute, drove up from where he's at in southern Indiana, which is about a 4-hour drive that the night before. Brought his kid, who videoed some of this, and so Klif's behind me, scrambling to get his car prepared because he also kind of came unprepared.
I had never fired the DSP wasn't hooked up into the car until that morning.
So again, Klif showed up unprepared.
So you are the customer that I was talking shit about.
Yeah. Yes.
Great. Awesome. See, Jeff won't say it. Jeff is staying silent right now. I don't care. I'll tell you guys, the level of unpreparedness out of most people is fucking absurd.
And of course,
you guys are paying good money for this.
Being privileged,
as a tuner, I appreciate that, and that's why I was prepared as I was, because I know how people.
Oh, so you're saying Klif isn't a tuner? Ooh.
Actually, I didn't even have working power. Toby had, because
fuck.
Well, my kid had changed my battery, and some jank shop out in Texas did my install, and so like the power came loose, and so then Toby had to like reconnect the power. So I didn't even know. I just got it was a PS8 Pro. I just got that. And it was still in the box, you know, Saturday morning while we're there. And so I wasn't for sure if it powered up. And then, I, of course, being privileged, I got the beta software for the PS8 Pro that morning that hasn't been released yet. So then I, decided to update firmware to unknown software while we were at it, which, Jeffrey hadn't used before. But, I mean, for the most part, other than Ben having to do all the heavy lifting, I was ready within seconds or so.
Sure you were. Jack is like looking at the camera right now. He's like having flashbacks this morning. Like, Klif, I hate you. And
I mean, he didn't have to skip lunch to do my car. So that was
So that's the other thing. Let me tell you about cold tacos. So Jeffrey switches gears. First of all, Klif didn't want to go through the whole process of mounting the microphones himself. So he says, Ben, you've already done it. Why don't you go do it? So
at the same time, I knew he had another appointment after us.
So I am now very experienced installing the Max microphones.
One time.
Two
times.
One plus one. Yes. At any rate, we got all that set up, ready to go, and he got started and was tuning Klif's. And in the meantime, of course, we're ordering lunch. So Toby and Greg, the other guy at the shop, go and get lunch, just as Jeffrey is kind of going through the motions of his Max tuning with Klif's fan, which only takes a few minutes, right? So I am nominated to get into Klif's vehicle after Jeffrey has done what he's doing, because Klif didn't, again, want to give feedback or
participate.
I just did. I mean, no, I didn't.
Well, pain in the ass customer.
Well, there's two sides of this. So I don't trust my ears at this point to really be consistent on the imaging cues, and that's what I figured was going to be most of it. So I figured that Ben would be better suited for that than I would, to try to get it consistently, to be able to give the feedback consistently to get it done.
But you may have been a more real world customer scenario.
Well, on the other hand, too, I realized now that I'm driving the vehicle that I wish I had done more to make it sound good for me, because regardless whether it's right or wrong, I would rather it be right for me.
Yep. Okay, so I hop in Klif's van then to verify the tune for Jeffrey. And this is immediately post max tune, right? I get in and Jeff's done his measurements and made the beep boop sounds, etc. on the computer. And
literally just all day, just beep boop was all he did.
So I get in and I fire up the first imaging track that Jeffrey specifies me to listen to, which is just Jeff, you can tell him what the track is and what I'm listening for if you want, but it's to verify center is center, right? And I get in and I'm again struggling because I can't find center. Center's everywhere. And I'm like, okay, it's over on the left. It's over on the left. Can you move it right? And it never really gets there. And then I'm like, what is going on here? So ultimately I go back to my voice is in phase, my voice is out of phase track, right? And he says my voice is in phase and it's this diffuse thing. And I can't, I'm like, okay, there's no center. And then he says my voice is out of phase and bam, it's like right in the center, right where it should be. And so I'm like, okay, we've got a driver pair, like flip the phase on the left one or whatever, pick a driver, flip the phase, and it fixed it. Right. So I don't know what happened there with the max and the timing and all that, but it was one of the driver pairs was out of phase in a simple phase. Was it two?
It was tweeter and mid bass. The whole side of the vehicle was wired differently.
Got it. Okay. So immediately
some jank shop in Texas
immediately fixed that with the button push, right? The image is still not well defined. It's kind of a loose. It's definitely, there's definitely a center image, but it's pretty big and it drifts and it's not like very all that precise. And meanwhile, the tacos have showed up. I've already been in the car about an hour trying to figure out, okay, what was going on here. Like the car just kind of had some problems that we had to sort through, right? And we got to sort out.
My vehicle is extremely different from anything else out there, so I mean, I'll give it that.
Klif's install, he's got 7-inch mid ranges aimed at each other, with the tweeters also aimed at each other directly above them. Nothing is on axis. You're definitely more on axis to the left side, and everything's obviously glass up there, etc. And it's just I don't know. I wouldn't, I don't know. I told Klif a couple of weeks ago when we first talked about that. So I was like, while Jeffrey's tuning my car, I probably want to hop in your van and tune your van. Like, since you're going to be here, and like, then we'll have 3 tunes on it. You got Nick, Jeff, and Ben, right? But I'm glad I didn't get that opportunity because Klif wasn't prepared. Because I wouldn't want to tune that car because there are definite install challenges with the aiming of the drivers specifically that are going to be hard for anybody to overcome with tuning. Let's put it that way. So I would say the tune is reasonable. Like, it's especially for an average Joe customer. Like, they come, they have it tuned, they leave. Yeah, it's good. And my van's kind of the same way. I'm happy with it as far as we got there. We got a tune that I've been listening to it since, right? And I now have some feedback, and we can talk through that here or privately afterwards. Like, I mean, it doesn't really matter. There are some things that I would want to massage with both of your tunes. Nick's is mostly mid-bass related. Jeffrey's, I think yours is mostly mid-range related. But ultimately, I have 2 tunes that were both done remotely. They're both usable. and I can at least now stand behind the fact that you guys are doing this and charging people decent money to do it. Nick obviously has said he doesn't really want to be doing this very much.
I charge what I do, frankly, because I know it's going to be more frustrating than I expect it to be.
Sure. Yeah. And that's absolutely fair. And you, during our process, told me, hey, I don't really do this anymore. In fact, I've been sending people to Jeffrey, and it's cool that you all are cooperating with each other to, help each other out and, send customers each other's ways when appropriate. Yeah. And I don't know.
Obviously, I had the opportunity to listen to, the comparative tunes on Ben's, as well as then compared to what Jeffrey did on mine. I mean, I think if Ben hadn't been futzing around with my vehicle and he had been able to spend the same amount of time with feedback with Jeffrey that he did with Nick, that Jeffrey's could have gotten a lot further.
Yeah. And that's to be fair to Jeff, like exactly that. Like I did get back in my car after I had my tacos. I got back in my car.
Cold tacos.
And we didn't call each other. I just started messaging you a couple little things about a little more of this, a little less of that. And I was kind of done listening at that point. Like it had been a long day, and
the tacos were hitting.
The tacos were starting to hit. I feel like, yeah, if you and I were to sync up now, I would give you some more feedback. And I think that we could take it further than it is currently. And I'm not saying it's bad. Now, again, I validated that, hey, this is a reasonable tune. I'm happy enough with it. But if I start nitpicking, there are things to nitpick with both of them. But yeah,
I will say, and he can't hear us right now, but both of your tunes are better than his. So there's that.
Yeah, well, obviously.
Jeffrey's
that's not that hard.
And Jeffrey's tune was better than his boss's tune. Just saying.
Oh.
But the biggest thing that I would say is like I said, I left the door too far open. Like I feel like if I could go back in time and go, hey, past Jeffrey from a week ago, make sure to hold the blinders on really tight and hold the reins really tight. And, force Ben to do A, B, C, D exactly like that. And I think we would have had a smoother process. Because I don't give anyone any rein when they do. If you're doing my tune and you're doing the remote tune, you're doing it exactly my way. You're listening to exactly my tracks. I don't care if you don't listen to anything else. We're doing it this way. Once we're done with my process, let's listen to your music. But we're doing exactly this.
The other thing there, I think, is at least in my vehicle, I mean, compare as far as doing the microphone circling the head thing from a driving position, probably would have been a lot more idiot proof than the mics, only because of my seating position. Like, because my seat is leaned so far back, but my head position isn't back there, and I don't think we really fully accounted for that. So I think the mics were further back than where you're actually seated, which throws it back kind of behind a ginormous B pillar. So I think that might have confused things on how it was reading.
Yeah, and again, I go through that very specifically. Like I'll tell clients, we're going to spend 10 minutes on setting up these microphones exactly where you sit. I want that center red microphone in the middle of your head on the same plane as your ear holes, like dead smack center in the center of your head. And then we're going to manipulate it once the way I tell you to, but it needs to be exactly here, because if you don't follow these exact instructions, we can fix it afterwards. But the goal of the tune is not to fix it afterwards. The goal of the tune is to take the microphones out. It's like, hey, tonality's an 8 out of 10. Imaging's there. We got fireworks in the background.
What is going on?
What the heck? How do you have all these? Now Nick's trying to make the fireworks.
How are you doing this? You're making hand signals, and you did the hearts before. Now you have fireworks and doing thumbs up.
If you do this one, it does something else too. It's Mac related stuff.
Oh my god.
Oh, because you're on a different computer. Is it the computer that's doing it?
I'm on a Mac.
We're all on Macs. Mine doesn't do that.
I'm on a Mac.
I'm not. So turn on your
Update
cameras.
to the latest
and
software,
React.
I guess.
I did. I tried. It doesn't do this shit. Hang on. So nobody listening to this is going to understand any of this, but we're on a call on
video.
Jeffrey's giving hand signals, and it's just going boom, and like there's fireworks. And he made a little heart with his hands, and there's hearts all over the video. Yes, that's cute. Nick's making
do the hearts. But no, so the point of doing that long setup is, like I could have started the remote tuning business a year prior to when I did, but I wanted to spend the time perfecting exactly how it needs to go. So if hypothetically my customer can duplicate exactly where I put the microphones, exactly how I aim them, and goes through my exact process, theoretically it should be as if I was there. At least that's the logic. So when I take them out, if they're not set up exactly perfect, we can compensate through the listening tracks, right? We'll listen to this, we'll center up that. Okay, we'll verify with this track. Okay, here's a couple tonality tracks, and you should be pretty solid. So,
well, I have to applaud both of you for putting yourselves out there like this, because even if I did things the way that you guys did with the tools that you use and the measurements and all that, I still wouldn't want to put my name on anything that I didn't put my ears in. And for the fact that you guys trust your process enough to do that and put yourself out there like that, like I applaud you guys, because I would refuse to do it.
It was a weird thing to do for a while. Jeff, I'm sure you're going through it too, where like you kind of hear chatter in the background of people like, oh, you can't really tune like that.
I think there's a whole new Facebook group for that.
Yeah, there is. But like, yeah, you can't really, it's like, sorry that cool. You can tune, but you do it in such an old school way, and you don't understand the first fucking thing about taking a measurement and interpreting the data. I'm sorry, but there's new shit out there that can help us do this stuff without hearing it. And as long as the install is solid, the speaker locations are good, we can produce a good sounding car easily. Like easily. Jeff, like I'm sure you fully agree. Like how easy is it truly, like even without listening? A good install, good speaker location, stick the mic in, do exactly what you're doing, even without listening. As soon as you fire it up, it's like very damn close to being this is a good car.
Well, and especially to comment on that, especially if you compare it to what others are doing. Now, I'm not talking about the 1% of the 1%. I'm not talking about anyone that we see at a sound quality show.
I'm even talking about the people we do see at the sound quality show.
So,
no, I'll call it out. I don't care. I don't have a problem. Like, I see what even these competitors are doing, and it's like, it's ridiculous. Even these
mediocre.
Even from the big names, there's a whole lot of mediocre. There's a whole lot of like non-understanding of actual data. Yeah, cool. You're an audiophile and you've collected the most expensive gear for the past 30 years. So fucking what? So what?
I definitely think that install is the most important thing. Nick and I have had this conversation about, gear, and, like he's commented that gear is holding me back, and I chuckle and I kind of say, oh yeah, maybe. But, I think that install is number one. I think tuning is number two. And I think gear is basically right after that in terms of what gives you the most performance. If you said, hey, install gives me 50% of the goal, and tuning gives me 30% more of the goal, and gear gives me 15% more of the goal, and the last 5% is the
fairy dust,
the alpaca hairs that you put inside the box that are woven by a Tibetan monk and all that stuff. So
and by the way, I also told you, I want to add this, I think I told you you're the only person I've ever told that to, that I think the gear is what's holding you back. I think I did tell you that, like the only thing that's holding your car back at this point, like not even holding it back, it's clearly very good, but it's like your install is not really getting better. Your tuning is obviously at a top tier level. What else is left?
Yeah.
I mean, what else do you improve?
But no, to comment on what you're saying, like I people ask me all the time, like, do you want to hear this tune, or how can you be so confident remotely? Or like, I get done with their tune at the shop and I'll go through my process, and, the same exact process that I instruct for all my customers, I'll go through those 4 tracks. If it lines up those 4 tracks, I'm out. I'm done. I'm going to go sell something. I'm going to go tune something else. I'm going to go continue making money. I'm not really interested in hearing it because I know once I get those things done, it's ready for someone like Ben, someone with a really, really good set of ears that can evaluate this thing a lot better than I can.
I think that's where we differ. I don't like that approach, to be honest.
Okay. Yeah. Go ahead.
I think the whole, take it to an event and see what a judge says.
Sure.
I'm going to piss some people off. I don't care. I think that is the stupidest, not the stupidest, but I think it's so ridiculous. These judges are, for the most part, just as bad as far as years go as the rest of these guys. And again, you could look at, the proof is kind of in the pudding. Look at the results from a lot of these events. Maybe not where you are in Texas. I don't really know about what goes on in Texas. California, they're good. Richard and Linda do an excellent job at that. But like everywhere else we go, we go to Steel Valley, and it's a fucking joke as far as the results go between the different organizations. And it's like, which one do we actually trust? And since I've been pretty much only going to Steel Valley and like occasionally popping into finals for the past, 5 or 6 years, it's just been like, I don't trust judges at all. I'm just here to have fun.
So if I can weigh on that for just a minute.
Yeah.
Look, and I tell any new competitor, especially this very thing, it's like, and anybody that I tune a car for who I know is going to go to a show and get judged. Tell them, go to multiple shows, get judged by multiple judges, look for the common feedback. If you've got 3 judges or 3, well-known other competitors who have a good ear telling you the same thing, that's something we probably need to focus on.
Yeah.
Right.
But let's be real. So, like if 3 people are pointing it out, the 3 of us would have heard it already.
Likely.
Sure.
Absolutely. Absolutely. But the other coin to that is, let me finish. The imaging is very, very strict. Like it's working or it's not, right? Tonality is very much something that you can settle into. Like your tonality reference, as much as I hate to say it as a judge, kind of becomes, the last thing you were listening to some degree. Like,
yeah, so, I also agree with that.
So there is, you can't really base your tonal curve around, especially loosey-goosey feedback. It's you got to look for consistencies, and there are judges who are prone to preferring more or less top end and more or less bottom end, and that's totally a preference thing. Which, as a competitor, you got to figure out which judge likes what and give them what they want when it's the right time.
Yeah, it's not as objective as it should be, but it's all we got.
That's a completely different podcast. But
Nick,
but yeah, the reason, go ahead. I was done with that.
The reason that I say that I don't want to be the tonality judge, to respond to you, Nick, is that I don't have any training. I've never played an instrument. The only tonal reference that I have is my own car and some Focal headphones.
I still trust you better than pretty much any judge I could think of.
Sure, I guess maybe I'm being modest, but I still believe this firmly, even if I, can admit that I'm maybe being a little modest on it, is that there's 5 people that if they get in my car and they say something, I do it. And there's 5 in the whole United States. And that's it. Like, so one of them is Ben. Mm-hmm. Another one is Jeff Smith. Mm-hmm. Another one is Mick Wallace. Mm-hmm. Another one is Tim Gowdy. Mm-hmm. And then last one, I've really, really had a lot of good feedback from, and when I say good feedback, not meaning like just, oh, Jeffrey, you're the best. Like actual, like if it's on the score sheet, that means it's there. That's what I mean when I say good feedback. Actually, Linda from California.
Yeah.
Very, 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 very difficult to seat her, being that I'm 1.5 feet taller than her. But I'm going to tell you that her and Jeff Smith, I've trusted Jeff Smith's feedback for years. Like, without question, I've trusted his feedback. And I got her finally seated in the right spot, the same spot that I put everyone, and Harry Kamira, that's another one, by the way. I really like Harry's feedback. But, like, I finally got her in the right spot. and her feedback was perfect again. Like, I could show you the score sheets. They are linear next to each
Jeff
other.
Smith's.
Yeah, to Jeff Smith's. And so it's like, when I get those judges, period, end of conversation.
Just point that out.
Just point when and it doesn't have to be in the Emma format. I trust their ears in any format that we're in. I trust their ears if they're listening to their own music. Me personally, that's my personal opinion. I'm not endorsing anyone else's.
No,
right?
I fully agree.
So, but I don't have any training of any sort. The only training that I have is my own personal car and hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of tunes optimizing my curve to what works pretty good for most judges. You know, it scores really good in this organization. It scores okay in that organization. It scores decent in this organization. Those judges like it better. These judges like it worse. This curve, I don't change tunes between judges. I say, hey, judge it for what it is. You tell me. And then, like Ben said, I fully endorse that too. Get 20 score sheets and look for the 4 that say the same thing. The other 16 are going to be thrown out. You know, they're going to be put in my storage box and never looked at.
Yeah, I have both past years score sheets from Steel Valley, and I never, like, before those, I like never kept score sheets. I don't really care enough to, but I kept them from the past 2 Steel Valley regionals, and like none of the feedback lines up. Like none of it. But, it's like, what the fuck is going on?
Klif can probably speak to some of the anomalies he sees in judging judges scoring, especially from money rounds, where he's publicly posted the order of each judge for each competitor, and they are just vastly different. And
I'm actually excited for this year's Steel Valley because it's the first lineup of judges I've seen that I'm like, oh, I think I trust all of them. So, I don't know. I'm pretty excited. Jeff, you should come. Let's go.
So, another thing about Steel Valley, I heard, well, first of all, Nick, I mentioned this to you when we were tuning. I was your ears. I was sitting in the driver's seat and I was moving the mic and I was listening. I was providing feedback. You were driving the controls. And I mentioned to you, hey, this reminds me an awful damn lot of the tuner challenge that Clifton did with Jeff Smith and some others in the UK about this was pre-COVID, right? Clifton, you can chime in. I think it was.
Yeah, it's 2018 or 19.
But anyway, it was a tuning pair. You had 2 people, driver's seat person and a passenger seat person who drove the computer, right? Mm-hmm. So, and then Clifton mentioned to me, which I've been in the dark with everything, but there's a tuner challenge that's going to happen at SVR this year. And I heard that Nick was signed up as a tuning pair with somebody. So I guess this is all going to kind of happen in person here in the United States with a good number of people who decide to jump into the tuning lanes. And that would be a really interesting exercise also.
Well, and kind of on that, I think for the people, I mean, especially where Jeffrey's kind of target here, especially with shops and stuff like that, and looking at this from an industry level, where, you know, there's a fair amount of us who have been trying to teach tuning for a very long time.
Falls on deaf ears.
It's very difficult.
I'll say it falls on deaf ears. They say they care, but they don't.
And when you don't practice it, you know, especially from the technical side, and this is where, like, it's funny because before I went through the practice of this with Ben and Jeffrey, and then hearing also, you know, the experience with Ben and Nick, and then hearing, you know, the results of everything. I mean, my kind of pitch on this was like, well, you can't teach everybody magic ears, so this is a good way to, you know, get around that. And I almost kind of feel the opposite now. I'm like, well, maybe for the people who can't wrap their minds around the technical side of things, let somebody else keep up on that as DSPs change and this and that, and, you know, have someone, you know, like, you know, get your JL Max or whatever, and you know, have Jeffrey handle the tunes that come through. But I think kind of having one or the other, but having a competent set of ears with a good reference on that other side obviously has the ability to take what y'all are doing to the next level, because it's kind of no different than back. I mean, when I was doing more tuning and had decent ears that were working right and everything else, like, but it was something that, I mean, like Scott Welch and I and others, I mean, spent hours just going back and forth. He would be doing the tuning, I'd get in, take a listen, give him feedback, get out, he would make some changes. Scott Walden and I did the same thing. You know, it was one of those things where, like, when you have that pair of being able to switch back and forth feedback and then doing the manipulation, it seems like you get to a better result. And you know, I think the same thing here. Like, that's where I think you can get to a competition level tune if you have somebody who knows what they're listening to on their side. Because at the end of the day, you know, if you have really good terminology and feedback to know what to do, you may know where to go that they don't on the technical end of it. But if they can give you the feedback, I mean, whether you're remote or on location, I don't think it makes a difference at that point.
Yeah. Fully agree. As long, like you just said, like as long as, you know, again, I don't know exactly how Jeff does it, but from my method, as long as after we're done measuring, everything works out fine. As long as I can give you 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 test tracks, like very tight, they're not music at all. It's just these weird, random, whatever tracks. And if you can relay exactly what they're doing to me, I can make the adjustments necessary, and it's good to go. You know, I'm going to dial in the phase between your mid-range and tweeter. I'm going to dial in timing of all of the drivers. I'm going to, you know, it's not hard. Again, if you understand audio, you understand the data, you understand how all of it works, it's all really simple, which is I think how I even like figured out, like, wait a second, I could do this remotely for people like 7 years ago. Actually, I didn't even think of it. Someone thought of it for me and said, Nick, why can't, come on, man, I don't want to drive all the way from Ohio. Can't you just like tune it remotely? And I was like, no, like what? And he's like, just log into my computer and I'll do it. And I was like, wait a second, you're right. Like it's a pretty straightforward thing. You know, there is no magic behind tuning. Jeff, I think you'd agree with that, right?
Yeah, I've made it as clear cut and dry as possible in my process, and you know, I think that the biggest takeaway for me is that if you follow either one of our processes, because they're vastly different. I know yours pretty well. I've read through the website. I know I haven't talked to you about mine explicitly, but you know, they're very, trust me when I tell you, they're completely backwards as far as the way that it's approached. But
100%, 100% third party observer. Yes.
But the end result, you know, barring any Facebook messing up my first impressions with Ben, you know, the end result is really, really cool and really good. It's like, you know, it's almost like data on a screen can mean good sound almost, you know, within.
Never would have guessed. Oh my God.
So I think, I mean, like I said, there's anomalies with cars. There's, you know, the way that speakers beam. There's the way that reflections that you can't compensate for without listening to. And that's where guys like Ben come in. That's where all of those really good judges come in. That's where money rounds come in, where they, you know, drop the high and the low score and they take the averages, like all of that stuff. And go into finals, all of that stuff is super duper important. But getting a 80 to 90% tune, whatever you want to call it, even if you have someone that has no experience like Ben, I promise you, using my method, and I'm sure with Nick's as well, you can take a really smart 15-year-old with no audio experience and say, follow these exact instructions, and you'll get a really, really, really good result. And that good result may be 80% to Ben, but to someone that doesn't have that experience, it might be like, oh my God.
That's what I was saying before. It's like the difference between 80 and 100 for someone who's never had a properly tuned system is still like the greatest thing in the world. You know, and when I first started talking about it, like I said, I did my first, it's funny, I actually looked it up the other day. I did my first remote tune in 2016. And once I did it, I started, you know, I did it with like a couple other people, but then in like 2017 is when I was like, I'm going to like do this. And I had so many people just talking shit. People that I looked up to, people whose cars would like, were doing really good and sounded good. And I was like, guys, like, you know, I know you're really good at this too, probably even better than me at the moment back then. But I think you're not seeing the full picture here. I'm not tuning for people that are expecting everything to be perfect, because they don't even know what is perfect. They have no way to they just want something that isn't terrible. That's all they want, And like you said, an 8 out of 10 is the greatest thing they've ever experienced by a wide margin. So like they're happy regardless. And then number 2, a lot of these guys, like just like I said before, don't understand how to measure, what it means, how to interpret it, how to apply it. And it's a totally different way of tuning. But yes, my method and your method, at the end of the day, if method 1 and method 2 both end up with accurate results, what does it matter? Like Ben, you just said both mine and Jeff's yielded a really good end result. It doesn't matter if I do it all by measurement and like the other guy does it all by ear listening to music. At the end of the day, if they both ended up as accurate, they both must be the same tune for the most part, because they're both accurate.
And as I said, I haven't gone and looked at y'all's tunes. I want to do that, but I'm not yet.
All right.
I'm very curious, and I want to compare it to I don't know. I have several iterations of obviously my own tune, and I would just like to start looking at, okay, what did they do that's similar, what's different, and just like start analyzing things. But I haven't wanted to do that intentionally yet, because I just want to keep listening to them for a while.
Yeah. So, I mean, and I guarantee you, sorry to cut you off, I guarantee you look at them, they'll be almost the same. When Luke made his post yesterday, me and Jeff had the same exact all pass filters for the most part. 2 totally different methods, same exact all pass filters. Yeah. Like again.
Wait, I thought that was just because Luke was your friend.
Oh yeah. No. Of course. Whatever. But like,
see, I block certain people and I don't get to see all
honestly, I block certain people. My life is actually, my going on social media has gotten
100%
a lot more like less annoying. But anyways, no, like back when I first started doing it, like I'm kind of just venting here from my first years of doing remote tuning. Like so many people talked shit, and it sucked because, I was just a young dude trying to fucking make half a living for myself, and I knew it worked and I knew it could work, and there were just so many people that had such an outdated way of going about making a car sound good that they couldn't possibly fathom that there was another way. And I actually look at it now, I'm like, I don't use a JL Max. I have Smart and I have mic arrays, but I don't use them. My preference, but like I look and I sometimes think to myself, I'm like, am I leaving myself in the past just like these motherfuckers that used to talk shit to me were doing? Maybe. I don't know. But like at the end of the day, they're still all yielding, at least the people that I know that are using objective data to do their tuning are always yielding, for the most part, great results. And frankly, the guys that were talking shit that are claim you have to do it all by ear, I hear your tunes now with a much more experienced ear, and you guys are not nearly as good as you think you are. I don't care. Sorry. But, again, I'm just salty from years ago about how many people used to talk shit about a process that I used to.
On the other side, though, I mean, I think with the combination of, guidance and feedback to get it there, if you think you know what you're doing with just the hardware and you're doing your own tune or whatever, and you also don't have the ear to direct that, you're probably not going to end up with as finished of tune as others are in that realm.
I don't know if I've kind of blanked for a second at the beginning of your sentence. I didn't miss anything.
Thanks.
I didn't hear it.
On the internet, they read the process, they followed the process, they use Rue, but they don't have the ear or the the reference of what a car is supposed to sound like and do.
Well, you know what? That's okay. that's okay, because like we were just saying before, an 8 out of 10 is still freaking amazing for a lot of these people.
I'm not saying that, but I think their expectation is because they did things on paper that it should be the best. And there's going to be
you're talking
people
about
that
like
are
following
better.
measurements that it should be the best.
Well,
I used to think that way. Go, Jeff.
So,
you go. You take that.
I can tell you from a ton of experience. I talk to people all day, every day that come into the shop and they've done their own tunes, and I talk to people that are critiquing the remote side, and I'm just going to go ahead and say it flat out as respectfully as possible. The skill level and the experience level, how many tunes you've done, directly correlates to your end result.
Yep.
I could tell you that, me currently to me 6 years ago, 7 years ago, totally different, even 3-4 years ago. And, it's not a fair comparison, in my opinion, if you take the amount of tunes that I've done or the amount of tunes that Nick done or the amount of tunes that Ben's done, because he's done a handful, metric ton too. If you take these tunes and you compare them to someone that said, well, hey, I've read process A off of this website, or I've, watched 1.5 million YouTube videos studying process B and I did it, and therefore my tune's the best. I'm going to tell you it's not. There's an endless ceiling of when you do more, like you practice more, it's going to get better and it's going to keep getting better. I've learned things in the last 2 months, and I've been tuning for 4 years publicly for pay, it's there's so much out there. And I talked to someone today.
Maybe I'll rephrase there. I think maybe it's the people who are getting the equipment. They've gotten a jail max themselves or whatever, and going out and, hey, I did the thing. I got the equipment. And now why am I not the best?
Like the Helix has a auto tuning feature, right? I mean, there are processors that have auto tuning features.
You know what's crazy about those too? If you know how to tune, but you use those and like you use your knowledge to kind of optimize those correctly, the end results are pretty damn eerily similar to what I did manually.
You and I talked about this when we were doing our tune, and the fact that we all have such very different tuning methods, but we all wind up with a very good result. Sometimes
you end up with a good result. Sometimes, as seen, sometimes you don't. Sometimes you come up to one of these shows and you listen to, oh my God, it's that car. Let me go listen to it. And you're like, wait.
Yeah, there are just you're right. There are bad tunes.
Yeah, and it's like, you know what? And
but we all have very different ways, and ultimately, like we all end up with tune systems. Like it may not be like, I mean, well,
yeah,
you don't disagree with that too, I guess. But
I've heard of some people's quote unquote systems, and I don't think it's much of a system. But okay,
yeah.
My system is eat hot tacos while Ben does it. That's my system.
Yeah.
Well, basically, the another thing is like, at finals, there was all kinds of mic arrays. There's all kinds of single mics. I saw 3 different maxes. Well, how come they were all not standing next to me holding the trophies that I was holding? Why is there that discrepancy?
That's what I was getting at. See, there you go. That's what I was going for.
Yeah.
So,
because your install's better.
Well, and like I said, install I think is 50% of the equation, and tuning is 30% of the equation. But my point is that there's 400 maxes. There's how many U mics? There's how many Omni mics, right? There's all these measurement equipments and all these hundreds and hundreds of people that have ever tuned a vehicle, and there is a hierarchy based on skill. If they're more skilled, the tune is better. It's just point blank. 100%. It doesn't matter if you break out a JL Max and you don't have a certain amount of skill or a certain amount of experience with it, it is not going to be good. If you gave and that as a great example, Ben's process is totally different than mine. Not that I know it, but if I gave him a JL Max, that tune wouldn't be very good. But if I just said, hey Ben, do your process, it would probably be freaking great.
I'll be honest with you. I struggle with the JL software all around. Like
I do as well.
It's so. I feel like I'm relearning it every time I do it that way.
But as long as you have
I don't think it's as polished as a lot of people make it out to be.
So I think that it's polished, but we can agree to disagree. But my point is that my point is that
I have nothing against JL. I love JL. I just the software. It's not my preference as far as software.
Sure, and
anyway.
And everyone has their preference, but the common ground that I would find between the three skilled, tuners in question, I know Clifton probably is a skilled tuner too, but I'm not counting him since he doesn't count himself as a tuner.
Yeah, his mic is off for a reason right now.
His mic is off. But in the three skilled tuners in this conversation, all three of us have totally different methods, but if you leave us to our own devices, you're going to get a great result. And I think that that's solely based on experience. And as it doesn't matter what method you use, as long as you follow that method and it works, good. But don't expect to pick up a Max and be as good as the tune that I did just because I use a Max. Or don't be, the same thing with Ben and Nick. Like, don't expect to use their setup and do that because you won't. You just don't have the right method.
Clifton sat in my van and listened to 3 tunes that we did. And the major differences between them are tonality.
Which again is like not, I think we all kind of said it here. It's not doesn't need to be as accurate as people make it out to be. I think people put too much weight on it because you don't really hear small differences in tonality. You get used to it so quickly.
Well,
it's not like something that's
differences in tonality between our 3 tunes are pretty major.
Okay.
As far as they're all within ballpark.
So,
yes,
so
they're all
like
yours is the upper mid range is kind of dark.
Really?
Whereas Jeffrey's the upper mid range is it has a lot of presence. Mine is just more similar to Jeffrey's with the upper mid range.
It's funny you say that because the most common comment I get after I do a tune, there's a little too much in like the 2 to 6K area.
Well, here's the thing. As I already mentioned with yours, the bass there's just overall too much of it, and it needs to be a little bit refined left to right. I understand, and I'm not saying. I'm saying
that
we
wasn't
left
my
it at
tune.
a point.
That was your portion of it, buddy.
See, he didn't tell me that he asked for more. So
he asked.
I asked for more sub bass. I did not ask for more mid bass. The most of the issue is in the mid bass, upper mid bass. We didn't spend a whole lot of time trying to refine that because you told me to go and listen to it, and then we would wrap back around after some time, which is what we're going to do, and we would massage it from there. So this is my honest feedback. Like it's good, but I'm being very, very picky.
Good. Let's be picky. Let's figure it out.
Yeah, exactly. So, and maybe I'm a bit of a bass head. Like,
well, we know that.
Call me a bass head. That's absolutely fair. But at the same time, it had like. At any rate, these are the differences. Like yours, I think that the upper mid range being kind of a bit darker has a little bit to do with there being more mid bass and more just overall lower end. So
it being masked,
and that's where I was going with this. Right, your mid range is kind of it's not forward like with Jeffrey's. There's the mid range is very much forward, upper mid range especially, and the other differences between your two is in the imaging. Nick's yours is very, very, very tight. It's razor sharp, but as you recall, we went through isolated 31 band pink noise and centered each one up individually. And that had a lot to do with that. Jeffrey, if we were to spend more time at this point, we would spend some time tightening up the image and then massaging the tonality, the forward mid-range a little bit down more.
Basically, my unprepared piece of crap ruined Jeffrey's tune on Ben's van. That's how that went.
And so
sorry, guys.
We can always blame Clifton.
The 31 band isolated pink noise, I'd like to touch on that because that is part of my tuning process. That's just not part of my remote tuning process that I offer to standard clients because they're not looking for that. They're looking for...
Yeah, and honestly, Nick didn't want me to do it. Nick has those tracks in his track list, but he uses them for... Sorry. Well, let me clarify. Nick has those tracks in his... this is what he wants me to do with a remote tune, but it's not for imaging. It's for tonality. And he wanted me to tell him which frequencies stood out. Is that...
Well, hold on.
Am I misunderstanding?
Yeah. Because so what I do with those, again, when I start a remote tune, I'm able to get an idea of what level of tune this customer needs. Are they super competent? Like, in a way, like, everyone is competent in their own way, let's be real. But, like, what I mean by competent is, do I feel they're going to be able to take the information that I give them and be able to relay information back to me accurately? If I get that, like, vibe from them, I will move forward with, like, the fullest extent of tuning that I pretty much do in person, which is, first it's all measurements, equalization, time alignment based on, it depends on the processor. If I'm doing a Helix, which is almost every time nowadays, I use their, automatic settings that they have, which pretty closely line up to impulse response that I take in Smart. And, we just do everything objectively, follow the house curve for each driver. And then we test with pink noise left to right on each driver. Do they sound the same in level, number one? And number two, do they sound the same in, like, tonality, I guess? Like, does this tweeter sound brighter? Yeah,
we did that.
Then if there's like, if again, and this kind of where it comes down to, like, evaluating the customer, is if they say, oh yeah, they sound perfect. Let's be real, Jeff, I think you can answer this one. Do they ever sound perfect? Absolutely not. But if the customer can't really tell a difference, I move on from there. Oh, okay, it's perfect, great. But if they're like, I don't know, they're the same in level, but, like, something's different from the left one to the right one, I'll be like, all right, let's load up the band limited pink noise, and we'll go through each one, and I'll just play. I'm like, don't focus on, like, what it sounds like in the center. I just say, which side sounds louder than the other, and we're going to balance out left to right. And then that helps. And then we'll do pink noise as a whole again. Okay, left to right. Do they sound, oh my God, yeah, they sound much closer, much more similar, whatever. Because again, no measurement system is perfect. No measurement system is going to be perfectly accurate based on how our ears and brain interpret it, especially in a car. But that last kind of step there, where we can go through by frequency and kind of adjust things to where it's closer by ear. And then, we match those, and then we will go through band limited pink noise with, like, both sides playing. And I go through it. I'm like, just let me know if any frequency sticks out like a sore thumb. We're not going to.
That's initially when we started going through this, what you were having me listen for. Yeah. And I told you, okay, I can't do that because of the way my brain works until we center everything up. Yeah. So I think we kind of maybe
we did things. I mean, honestly,
what you usually do it.
I tune in different orders all the time. Jeff, I'm sure you do the same thing too. You kind of mix things up a little bit. At the end of the day, it still yields like a similar end result. But I don't know about you guys. I mix things up a little bit. But yeah, you fix left to right. But I think the way we went about it was, you mentioned the reason I might have gone that way is you might have mentioned something that stood out to me that made me go, okay, let's dive into that first before we do that. I don't know. Who the hell knows?
Yeah. At any rate, we did the 30 band isolated pink noise exercise, and that ultimately is the reason that your imaging is tighter. And again, Jeff raises in phase. It's clear that there's a center. It's mostly in the center, but there's some drifting frequency dependent like that. I mean,
by the way, I'll tell you this. I've only done band limited pink noise remotely. Like I said, I'll only do it with people that I think will genuinely be able to give me accurate feedback. Because if they're telling me, like, yeah, I can hear a difference between, like, left and right with full range pink noise, like, if I don't get the vibe that, like, they can accurately relay it to me, they are probably going to screw it up more than they fix it.
Right.
So I still leave it. I've only really done band limited pink noise fully with, like, 2 or 3 people.
Okay. So again, the person in the car on the other end plays a huge role into, especially your tune, how it ends up. And like that's 100%.
No, so and that's where I totally differ on my process. I purposely didn't do band limited pink noise with you, Ben, because I wanted you to get the genuine process, which is it's totally hands off. It's going to be mostly there. Like, yeah, we could have done band limited pink noise. We have the ability to do advanced tonality stuff. Yeah. We could have put you in the car and done band limited pink noise. we could have done tonal balances like, yeah, your mid-range is a little forward. Can you massage that down for me? Yeah, of course I can, Ben. That's an easy fix, just like Nick said at the beginning.
Yeah.
But
Yep.
most customers aren't you, and I wanted to give you a genuine experience of exactly what most customers get. They get exactly, barring the Facebook thing and barring the one install having backwards wired speakers that I didn't correct for some reason, which you can do in Macs. You can see that they're backwards.
Right.
But barring that, barring those two things, I wanted you guys to have a very genuine experience. I don't do band limited pink noise. I totally can.
And that was the goal.
We absolutely can. Yep. But I wasn't interested in that. I wasn't interested in polishing up this thing to look extra shiny because it's Ben Zimmerman. No, I was like, dude, I'm going to give you the same exact thing that I give everyone. Hopefully it's good enough. You know how to make it better. We can make it better. It doesn't matter. I don't care. I just wanted you to have the same thing that I give to everyone.
I'm not going to touch. I will tell you both that I don't want to touch you guys' tunes. Like if we're going to make some changes to kind of like massage things, I'm going to look to you guys and you can either remote in or just tell me what to do to your tune and I'll do it. But I intentionally don't want to touch your tunes.
I'm just going to say, fix it.
Yeah.
So, and
all right.
I would like to comment on that part of the process too, Ben, because I don't require anyone to have a max the second time. Once we get to the point that you're at currently, we've already done most of the left to right. Yeah. Now everything's totally remote with just the software open, no measurement tools. It's just your ears and tracks.
Yeah.
But I always do that on a separate thing. I don't do that on the same day. I say, here's your tune. If you want to do additional stuff, if you feel like you can go farther with it, we will go farther with it together.
That's what Nick said.
Yeah. If you're capable of it. Yep. Yeah. But 9 times out of 10, the ears aren't capable enough. And if they're not capable enough, the 8 is the same as the 10 out of 10. So yeah, I mean, I think for both of us, it's just a matter of the objective is going to end up solid. I think it would be fair to say your objective alone will take it a little bit further than mine. But then after that, when it comes time to doing it by ear, it's all going to yield a pretty similar thing if the person can accurately relay that information. And again, the objective portion of it, again, purely relies on how good that install is and those speaker locations and, all of the things that relate to a measurement accurately correlating to what our ears and brain interpret. So,
cool.
Yeah.
Well, color me surprised because this went a lot better than I expected from either of you. Like I said, I had very low expectations going into all of this. I just wanted to see, but I'm genuinely curious. I'm like, how's this going to work out? And it did. And
better than you could do.
Yeah. There you go.
No, I'm kidding.
I think the
Klif, did you have anything else to chime in on this podcast?
Who is this blank box?
So it's been 2 hours, guys. Going on.
Is Jeff's audio stream delayed or is it just me?
Yeah.
He's in a different little realm.
His connection's maxed
moving, but
Jeff, you are delayed behind all of us. I don't know if you noticed it or not, but Klif is going to fix that in post, and he's going to edit this crap out.
Text is actively seceding as we speak.
Yeah,
it's just slowly. Can you fix that with Max or?
All right,
I need an all pass,
guys. We're going on 2 hours.
I think
we've gone beyond.
It's physically impossible.
We've beyond tuning in person. We have gone remote.
All right. Anybody else have anything pertinent to add? Questions, concerns, or otherwise?
Jeff, I think we see your mouth moving. It's going to take a minute for your audio to come through, but
right.
Here, guys, let's just wait for 30 seconds and see if he says anything. All right.
If I just predict what you say, and then I can reply on time, it's good. And there it is.
Cool.
I'm leaving this all in.
Jeff's stream is out of time. Oh, maybe someone someone just like in Klif, someone in Texas wired something backwards and he's out of time.
He just doesn't know that his internet's backwards.
Yeah,
If anyone is listening this long, they deserve to hear all this.
Yeah. No.
How about the ones we especially like?
Which ones?
The ones with the cars that go.
I hear you. Hit it.